Hi, today I'm here with MP Arnold Viersen to talk about the Conservative leadership race and the 5 asks that you've made or that the Pro-Life Caucus has made to the leadership candidates. So first of all, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Nicole, it's great to be here. I'm excited about the Conservative Party leadership race. Picking a new leader is always a time of growth for our party and for people to get involved, and it's always exciting. So we've got some great candidates putting their names forward, and I'm hoping to see them put some pro-life policy forward so that we have selection when we're pursuing the leadership.
Yeah, no, before we get into the details of what you asked, I thought it was really interesting that you asked all of the candidates to comment on quite a broad range of things that I think will help not only pro-life policies, but also just strengthen the functioning of Parliament. Why did you take that approach?
Well, it just as this is my third leadership race that I've participated in, and Pro-Life Caucus has never all gotten behind one of the candidates. Candidates have different things that they bring to the table, different things that they have to offer, and some people are supported for a host of different reasons. So Pro-Life Caucus has typically kind of divided itself up among the different, in terms of endorsements, between all of the different candidates. And so rather than trying to get Pro-Life Caucus organized around a particular candidate, we thought we would bring forward basically an ask, like these are the areas of which Pro-Life Caucus is interested in seeing policy being brought forward, seeing interactions between leadership and party leadership and the Pro-Life Caucus, and that relationship, how we would like to see that operate. And so those are some of the things that these was regardless of which leadership campaign or team Pro-Life Caucus members got onto, these were some of the things that we were hoping to advocate for. So we put together a document that kind of unified us around those things. And it also allows for leadership candidates to then bring forward policy, understand what we're looking for, and then bring forward policies that fill in some of those areas, and to use their imagination and their intellect to answer some of the questions that we put forward.
Well, actually, just getting that whole idea of imagination, that was one of the very first things you talked about in the first ask on saving lives, was how can we think imaginatively or creatively about ways that we can help lower the abortion rates in Canada without maybe even changing the law. So have you given any thought to that, or you heard any good ideas on that area?
Yeah, so in Canada, approximately 300 babies lose their lives due to abortion every day. That's an unfathomable amount of numbers. So annually, it's about 100,000 babies, and that's one of the things that motivates me as a member of Parliament. It motivated me to get involved, and it's a thing that motivates thousands of Canadians across the country to get involved in politics. And so that's one of the things. Now, it was my colleague Scott Reed that actually pointed that out one day and said, like, rather than thinking about abortion as an idea, think about it as a number, and change your thinking on it a little bit. So since then, I've been talking about the 300 babies that die every day, and thinking about that trend. The trend, it seems to be growing a little bit, but it would be nice to see that trend going in the other direction. So if only 200 babies died every day because of abortion instead of 300, that would be a win in my books. And so that was particularly where think about things that the government can do to reduce the rate, rather than about tackling the idea of abortion. Now, there's many things that can be done for that, and we can look around the world and see what other countries are doing. So the country of Hungary, for example, has doubled their birth rate and halved their abortion rate over the last 10 years, bringing in a whole suite of government policies. So in Canada, we subsidize electric cars. In Hungary, for example, they subsidize 7-passenger vehicles. Those are kind of these like pro-family, pro-birth rate initiatives. I think the state of Israel has, like, I call them like pregnancy care center SWAT teams. And so if they see a particular postal code that is having an uptick in abortions, or there's starting to be a lot of abortions in that particular postal code, the government actually has like a mobile pregnancy care center, or a pregnancy care SWAT team that moves into that community and does this like pregnancy care work in that community, to understand why is there an increase in the abortion rate in this particular community, and how do we work to reduce that abortion rate. And so it's things like that I'm looking for leadership candidates to come forward with use their imagination, and how do we bring some of these ideas maybe to the Canadian context, or maybe they have I live and work inside the pro-life world, and we have the ways that we think about things, and we bring those forward into the public space. But maybe somebody that comes from the economic world or the finance world might have a completely different tact on how to tackle that number. Bring those ideas to the membership, and promote those, and motivate. Bring a highly motivated group of people to vote for them because of their pro-life ideas that would reduce the number of abortions that happen in Canada.
Okay, and so then your second area was on protecting freedom. And our organization has been particularly concerned about the attacks on conscience rights of physicians and other healthcare workers. And of course, many doctors are not particularly involved in politics. Many individuals involved in pro-life organizations are not political animals, nor they're just out there trying to help people. So from your perspective, why should pro-life Canadians get involved in politics?
Yeah, so that my protecting freedom part is much more broadly than just getting involved in politics. The protecting freedom is allowing pro-lifers to participate fully in Canadian society, and so that the conscience rights of doctors is a part of that protecting freedom. But it's also the ability for pro-life groups to get approved at their university, the ability for pro-life organizations to maintain their charitable status, the ability for pro-life organizations to get Canada summer jobs applicants through their system. So it's a maintaining, ensuring that the rights and privileges of being a Canadian are also available to pro-life individuals and organizations across the country. Why should pro-lifers get involved in politics is probably a separate question from that. But I think the most important reason that we need pro-lifers to get involved in politics is because 300 babies die every day in Canada because of abortion. And for the sake of those people, we need to ensure that the law protects them. We need to ensure that the government isn't doing things to promote abortion. We need to be doing things so that the government is stepping out of the way to ensure that folks that that get pregnant can bring that baby to delivery, and we can have more and more Canadians be born in this country, and reduce that number from 300 abortions every year to less than 300. Preferably, we'd like to see it zero. I don't think we'll get to zero tomorrow, but maybe in my lifetime that is a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly people who are feel backed into a corner over abortions, women in particular, are looking for other solutions, ways to be supported, ways to help them get, I guess, more help. And I think is particular where the government can play a role.
Yeah, 100%. The Abortion Rights Coalition, of who are no friends of mine, they point out in their own report that the vast majority of women who have an abortion have one because they feel they have no other choice. And so when that is the reality, I think it's incumbent upon Canadian society and the government being a weather vane of that, to promote options for folks, for ladies that that are pregnant, to ensure that abortion is not the only other choice.
Okay. So another ask, I guess, was strengthening Parliament. And we've certainly, in my lifetime, I don't know if I've ever seen a Parliament this, let's just say, dynamic or different in terms of the things that have happened in the last couple of months. from Bill C7 and the way that rocketed through Parliament to the Emergency Measures Act. It's been pretty.
And now the coalition.
Yes. Well, yeah. So when you're talking about strengthening Parliament, and I know people often phone or write their MPs, does that make a difference? Like, are MPs really listening to what their constituents are saying?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Like, I don't think you're necessarily going to flip someone entirely just by one email. That's not a reality. But the volume of emails does get noticed, and folks paying attention to what's happening in Parliament is definitely a reality. Now, when I said like promoting democracy or promoting Parliament, that's like changes that can be made to the way that Parliament operates to ensure that individual members of Parliament can have their voices heard. One of the significant changes to the way that Parliament operates was the Reform Act. You know, the Reform Act made it so that members of Parliament maintained more power in relationship to their leader. This was something that Member of Parliament Michael Chong and about 6 or 7 other members of Parliament had really worked for and brought this Reform Act in. And what it did is it said that leaders cannot throw out members of their own caucus unless there's a vote in caucus to make that happen. So that protected the individual caucus members from unilateral decisions of the leader. In addition, it also allowed for a rule that said that caucus would choose the caucus chair. So there's the leader of the party, there's the shadow cabinet, then there's the caucus, which is all of the members of a particular party, and then there's a chair of the caucus. So when we're having discussions around what our policy position is going to be on something like that, somebody has to run that meeting, and so we pick our own caucus chair. In the past, that caucus chair has been appointed by the leader of the party. Now the party chooses that caucus chair, and then finally, this is the first time that it's ever been used. The Reform Act made it so that the caucus or the members of Parliament can choose to remove the leader, and we've seen that happen with Aaron O'Toole. That's the reason we're having this whole discussion, is because we're looking for a new leader. But that was an outcome of the Reform Act. So the Reform Act was one of these like changes to Parliament that made it more democratic, that made it so that individual members have more autonomy and more power, sort of thing. So we're asking for leadership candidates to do things like that to ensure that individual members have increased changes to the way that Parliament operates, so that individual members have an ability to bring forward ideas that pro-lifers might want to push forward. So it's not necessarily a pro-life thing, but it allows us to use the tools of Parliament to bring forward the pro-life issue.
So just on that note, did the Reform Act speak at all to having free votes, or is that something how does that work within the parliamentary system?
So free votes there's no parliamentary rules around free votes. Free votes are something that is kind of recognized in the Conservative Party constitution, where it just says that on issues of conscience, we will allow free votes, which means that the whip won't get involved one way or the other. If you vote one way or if you vote the other way, the whip won't get involved. There isn't necessarily clear definitions on free votes, what becomes a free vote and what isn't a free vote. It's kind of like a confidence vote. It's that and a confidence vote is if the government gets taken down. Like, some things are clearly confidence votes and other things just get declared to be confidence votes. And it's kind of like that with the free vote. It's like they're votes of conscience, but a lot of things people's consciences are concerned about, and so like balanced budgets and tax increases and all these kind of things. Some people can't get that over their conscience either, right? So what is a conscience issue? So the issue of free votes is something, it's a term that's in our party constitution, and you do see them happen from time to time, where our party caucus, there's a split vote within our party caucus, and those are typically considered free votes. If it's not a free vote, then you'll notice that if there's somebody that votes opposite to the rest of the caucus, they often face discipline. So that would mean they're being removed from the committee that they're on. They're not being allowed to travel. They're not given the travel opportunities. Their seat might be moved in the House of Commons. It might be moved from the front to the back. If they have a position within the party, they'll be stripped of that. That's kind of what happens if it's not a free vote.
Okay.
So
yeah. In terms of with Bill C7, for example, the extension of the euthanasia bill, we saw a lot of, I guess, we thought when we were working very hard on that bill that we would see more movement on the Liberal and NDP side, and we didn't in the end. We saw a little bit. Now, how do the other parties deal with votes like that, or are they typically whipped?
Yeah, so like I said, the term free vote is just in our party constitution. So it's a Conservative Party idea. We've had it. I can't remember Mr. Pawlowski voted, and it might have been that bill. I can't remember exactly. Mr. Pawlowski voted against his party, but he was kind of the only one. And so he claimed that it was a free vote, but what's interesting is that their party constitution doesn't speak at all about free votes, and the free vote, it is not. It's not really part of the Liberal culture, the NDP culture neither. So we celebrated that at that time when he claimed that it was a free vote, and we said, we're glad to see that the Liberals are respecting democracy and allowing their caucus to have free votes, just like the Conservative caucus. But yeah, it's much more a Conservative caucus thing than probably any other party. Typically, they have fairly whipped votes on the other side, and we've seen even just in terms of speaking out, we saw Joel Lightbaum speak out about the COVID mandates and things like that, and he was then removed from position within the party and things like that. So that's fairly typical.
Okay, and so then just getting on to the whole federal, and then we have the provincial jurisdictions as well, getting in there on healthcare. So how does that work in terms of what the federal government can bring to bear in terms of the healthcare? And go ahead.
So the other line is just about respecting jurisdiction. Now, this comes in with interprovincial jurisdiction, but also other countries. And so we see Garnet Jennis, a friend of mine, a fellow MP, he's at committee. He's been asking the minister about funding of illegal activity in Africa and things like that. Right? So does the government fund illegal activity in Africa? Respecting the other jurisdictions. So many African countries, abortion is illegal, and yet Canada is funding organizations that provide abortions in Africa. And so that's one of the concerns around the respecting jurisdiction or other jurisdictions. And then we see right here in Canada as well as healthcare is the delivery of healthcare is a provincial issue. And we want to ensure that the federal government is not dictating to provinces how they should and shouldn't spend their healthcare dollars that they get transferred from the federal government. And this in particular comes with the abortion clinic out in New Brunswick. That's been a thing that comes up over and over again in the House of Commons, and yet it's provincial jurisdiction. And in any other case, there would be a great uproar about the imposition of federal, the federal imposing its will on the provinces. But in this particular case, particularly the NDP, who normally rail on about that, are not as concerned about it. So those are like the jurisdictional. So those are just two examples of some of the jurisdictional issues, but that is something that I think leadership candidates will be interested in speaking to, particularly if they're from Quebec. That whole provincial jurisdiction is always a big piece of any leadership campaign, and I want pro-lifers to think about how, like, what the particularly when you're campaigning to Quebec, the provincial jurisdiction is a big part of that discussion, and I want pro-lifers to think about how does that discussion around provincial jurisdiction or jurisdictions in other countries, how does that affect the pro-life issue?
Right. And then your final ask, if I may say that way, is protecting life after birth, and talking about the compassion or the support that the government can provide to women after birth, so that they are not in such challenging situations where they may choose abortion as an option.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any interesting policy proposals in that regard?
Yeah, so just around like the child tax benefit, for example, it was a conservative idea. We brought it in the 2015 election. Was one of our election platform. Well, I think it actually came in just before the election. We introduced the program. That's one of the things. The other thing around that particular ask is also around euthanasia, and how do we where pro-life caucus and as a pro-life member, I typically think of that as being anti-abortion. I don't think that we should have abortion in this country, but the that piece around the euthanasia bit as well is just the C that was C7, I do believe, in the last parliament, around the mental health, inclusion, and all this kind of stuff happening. I'm looking for leadership candidates to speak to that as well, and that's where that piece would come in as well. Palliative care would fit under there as well. So how, like, allow them to, I try to leave it broad enough that they can use their own imagination, and the area of which they like to speak in. Like every candidate kind of has a brand that they're promoting, a policy, like an angle of which most of their policies will then fit from. And I like them to be able to, rather than prescribing the policy and saying, hey, this is the policy that we're looking for. No, these are the policy areas. And if you can make a policy that fits with your the general thrust of the brand of your campaign sort of thing, remember to include a little bit around these issues, and you would, those things would help to attract pro-lifers to your campaign.
Yeah, no, I noticed during this, I think it was the Senate hearings around Bill C7, Minister Qualtrough said that it was easier to get MAID in this country than it was to get a wheelchair. And certainly for disabled Canadians, that is just a horrific way to live. So I think there's lots of scope for leadership candidates to speak about supporting people so that they have dignified and humane lives.
Yeah, and so I guess the other thing around the leadership campaign is we will have a leader at the end of it, and they will be a human being with flaws. There is no doubt about that. But on the other side of it is that we have the opportunity to vote, to pick one of these individuals. Now, our system is a ranked ballot. So there's the opportunity for you to rank all of the candidates. And I just, if folks leave with nothing else from this video, it's that my desire for all of them is that they buy a Conservative Party membership, participate in the leadership race, and fill out their entire ballot, so that we have so that we get a clear measure of the candidates from pro-lifers. If they only put down one person, we don't get to see how the other folks rank on it, and it's just great to have that ranking, because it does tell a story, and to ensure that folks fill out their entire ballot regardless of how they fill it out. Make sure that they pick their number one, and they pick their number two, they pick their number three, number four, and it turns out there might be like 7 or 8 in this particular one now. So pay attention to what they all have to say when you're communicating with the individual candidates. Talk to them about these issues. Try to figure out, they'll probably have a theme Typically, they have 3 words as part of their slogan of their campaign. So figure out how their campaign fits within these 5 areas, and ask them to address these areas if you are able to communicate with the individual leaders.
Okay, so on that point, then what's the magic date if people want to get involved in the Conservative race? When do they have to have their membership bought by?
June 2nd. So June 2nd or June 3rd.
Okay, you better know that number.
Yeah. So so it's, I think I'll say June 2nd because that's a day earlier.
Okay.
I'm not sure if June 2nd is the last day they can buy it and they have to have it by June the 3rd, or if you can still buy it on June the 3rd. But I would just say, just go and buy it right now, conservative.ca, and you can go buy your Conservative Party membership. Getting a membership right now gets you on the email list. Then you'll get communications from all of the candidates. You can reach out and volunteer on particular campaigns. Sign up your church community to become members of everybody you know. Get them to be, all the pro-lifers you know, get them to sign up to be Conservative Party members. Well, I always say politics is less than the sum of its parts. Now, you'll notice that that's opposite of what most people say. Most people are always like, I'm trying to build an organization that's more than the sum of its parts. But politics is typically less than the sum of its parts, because whatever organization you're working in, it seems like in politics, there's always somebody that's working at odds with you. So if we want to get outcomes that we want to see, we have to throw more parts that we want to see in there. And the more people that think like us, that are involved in the decision-making process, the outcome should be in alignment with what we're hoping for.
Very good. And I think Canada will be much better off if we can have people in politics and in positions of power who actually care about people.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I know you're in the house and you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Hey, no problem, Nicole. Anytime.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.